I've decided that with every new build of Grim Dawn that's released, regardless of how big the update is and what the update brings to the table, I am going to do a video for Albrecht's Aether Ray on my Albrecht's Aether Ray Arcanist. So far, it's been my favorite build. And I've had a lot of fun just playing this build, and it's come a long way from when the Arcanist was first introduced, and it's gotten a lot of updates. And in build 25, it got a small update because of what they released gear-wise. First thing, this is gonna require Revered in Devil's Crossing. Though if you get to Honored, it works. You can get part of this as well. I've decided to change from the Blackwood Wand, I think it's called, to Devil's Bargain. And the reason for this is because the Blackwood Wand is great, don't get me wrong. It is an Aether damage caster weapon that has flat Aether damage, and has +1 to all Arcana skills and +1 to all Occultist skills. It's a really solid weapon. And it's a really good option for this build. But I wanted to change to something that had % Aether damage on it. And that's why I went with Devil's Bargain. Because it does have that % Aether damage, in addition to having Spirit and casting speed. Which is really important the way the Ray works now, and it's really important for Kalidor's Tempest. It also comes with Arcane Blast, so 10% chance when hit by melee attacks. You basically retaliate with a bunch of weapon damage and then a bunch of Aether damage. It's a really solid, like, free Kalidor's Tempest, basically. And you'd be surprised how many times it just clears out a trash mob that tries to hit you. The other new thing is the Devil's Wrath Seal is a ring available in Devil's Crossing when you get to Revered level. This requires Honored. Is it Honored? Honored. The ring requires you to have Revered, which took a while to farm up, but I think it's worth it because it does have flat Aether damage and % Aether damage, in addition to energy regen, attack speed, and casting speed, and that damage reflected. This is replacing the Lore Keeper's Band I had right there, and Lore Keeper's Band, again, is a great option for this because of that +2 to inner focus. But I really wanted a ring that fit together really well with the Aether Ray. The other new thing are the augments. And in Devil's Crossing, at a respected level, there is... I'm just going to go look at it. At the respected level, I believe it's like Corpse Fiend Tentacle. Yeah, Corpse Fiend Tentacle gives 10% Vitality damage and +10% Aether damage. I'm rocking 2 of these on my rings because the beam is obviously Aether, but also Disintegration has Vitality damage on it. And that extra 20% Vitality damage does add up to just having the beam more powerful. So right now my Aether damage is at +370%, and my Vitality damage is at +89%. So, I mean, the beam, and I mean, my fire damage is at +192, and that's, you know, all respectable numbers based on my gearing. So, I'm also using the one you get from Revered, which would be the Survivor's Perseverance. The Chaos damage doesn't mean anything for me, but the +15% Aether damage does, and it's a little more Aether damage than what Corpse Fiend Tentacle provides, and it has this less damage from Ethereals, Chthonics, and Aether corruptions, which is helpful when you have to deal with, like, things that are more robust towards your Aether damage, are generally those things, and this does help with a bit of defense against them. And that reminds me that the Aether Soul has also been changed. Aether Soul used to be like a flat 5 Aether damage, I think, and then 10% energy regen, plus your completion bonus. Now it gives you 10% Aether damage, and then 6% Aether resistance, and 6% less damage from Ethereals and Aether corruptions. What this means is Aether Soul, like losing that 20% regen did drop my energy regen by quite a bit. And I have sort of made up for it with a few little tweaks here and there in my gear, but for the most part, losing that 20% energy regen is a little, like, it does hurt a little bit, but it doesn't make the build worse, because you're actually getting a damage boost to your ray, because that 10% Aether damage now is going to make the ray that much stronger, because before when it was just flat 5 Aether, it was just much lower damage added to the beam, because the beam itself doesn't pull a lot from your weapon damage, so having less of just the flat damage and more on the percent is actually a benefit to me, in addition to getting that Aether res for dealing with like reflective things, and then the less damage from the ethereal stuff. So I'd say it's about an even exchange, and it did cause me though to drop an Aether Soul for an Arcane Lens on my amulet, because the Arcane Lens does add elemental damage, which helps your beam, but it also gives you the skill energy cost reduction, which is really helpful for the Aether Ray. And speaking of gear differences, I did, in the previous video I think I showed, I had Myvin's 2 set going between my source, or I mean my offhand, this isn't Diablo, between my offhand and my my amulet, and I decided to switch to a Crushing Will, specifically because this Crushing Will dropped with plus 23% attack speed, which I don't know what the highest roll you can get on that is. Can I do the control thing? No. Okay, I would assume it'd be like 25, but that amount of casting speed was just too good to pass up, so I decided to go with it. I threw a Haunted Steel in that offhand, mostly because I couldn't think of anything else to put in there. I thought maybe a Radiant Gem would work, but ultimately I decided to go with the Haunted Steel. I'm not using Blood Drinker 2. It doesn't proc enough off my abilities, so yeah, I'm just using it. I'm using it more for that 25% vitality damage added on to the small vitality damage the beam does. And I really can't think of anything I'd want to go with there aside from the Radiant Gem. And obviously Amulet of the Eye, I'm using that Arcane Lens I mentioned. Finally, for augments, I do have more vitality damage on my weapon. And for this one, we're going to very quickly go to the Rover Camp. And this requires Respected in the Rover Camp for the Arcavian Bone Meal 1, which is what I'm using on my weapon. And there isn't really an Aether augment for the weapon I have access to right now. And the other alternative is one from Homestead, which adds fire damage on. But I decided to go with the vitality damage because this was just more damage. It's 15 as opposed to 10, and the fire one I had access to had plus 10 to chaos, which does, nothing obviously for me right now. So yeah, I went with the Arcavian Bone Meal on my weapon. Points wise, nothing much has changed. I did some playing around with maybe adding Nullification in, and then maybe adding Reckless Power and Ascendance in, but none of those really worked for me that well. I always just ended up killing things quickly before I really had a chance to nullify whatever effects they had on them. Or, like, Reckless Power did hurry some bosses along, but I was never using it. So the only thing I've added in is Devastation. I learned that Devastation was really good when I did that Demolitionist spec. And Devastation just as a 1-point wonder works great for clearing out a lot of mobs at a distance. Otherwise, I just stick with Kalidor's Tempest up close for getting surrounded. And obviously, using the beam as my main source of damage, specifically against single targets, or against enemies that line up. The only new point I threw in here was Overload for the flat percentage elemental damage. Iskandar's doesn't really add a lot on, in all honesty. And it's jumped up to like +7 because 1 point plus the 3 points from my skills plus 1 point on my shoulders, or is it 2 points on my shoulders? Like, it gets up to +7 yeah, 2 from my shoulders, 1 from my offhand, 3 point, +3 Arcana skills, and then the 1 point added in, so it ended up just being 7 anyways. So that does help for that tiny bit of weapon damage, this ability, and this ability add on to my attacks, but for the most part, I wanted to get it to get 1 point into here for the flat elemental damage added on to all my attacks. I decided to include a few short highlights to show off what the beam is like right now. And I'm starting with these scarecrows because the scarecrows are kind of the bane of my existence whenever I go into Act 3. They just suck up so much energy because they die and then die again. And that's why, like, right here, my energy is just gone. Because I had to fight a few scarecrows. But, you know, I huff an energy drink and get right back into it. Right here is all three aspects of the build kind of working in concert. Because you have Calidor's Tempest, which is super fast with the casting speed I have right now. Sort of taking out all the little guys that run up to me. The beam taking out single targets at a distance, and then that first wave of devastation, just to devastate things. And then yeah, here's another, like, just like Calidor's Tempest. Cast almost like Wand of Woe, and then finish things off with, you know, devastation. And pick things off with the beam here, and then Calidor's Tempest. The synergy's working really well here for everything. And then, here comes, there's a bee in here that's a hero, and it's like, dead, derp, derp, done. It's a really great feeling to just one-shot enemy, practically one-shot enemy heroes. And here's another one where it's like, Calidor's Tempest, whatever, beam, done. Because with the casting speed getting lumped into the damage of the beam, it's just so devastating. And then here's devastation in a small area, which is pretty insane, followed by some beaming. Little Calidor's Tempest mixed in there. And again, just to have some Calidor's Tempest action. And then some devastation. And it's like, I didn't even need the beam, really. So for the queen, am I at the queen? Everything's chopped up weirdly. Yeah, so for the queen here, it's like I want to take out the ads, and I kind of run up this hallway a couple times, just to keep her, just to take out the like little guys she spawns in during the first phase. And actually kind of forgot she did that, so I go to beam her down right here, and I had to run away because I'm like, oh, that's a horde. I don't want to get horded in poison. So yeah, I take these guys out, and then it's just, I walk around these 2 poison clouds, and it's like, boom, out of the wall. And it's like I do hit her with the devastation here, and then it's like, I hide behind Mirror of Aractes, and she's done. So I have a little snippet more in items, and then I'm going to sign off in town. Before I sign off, I wanted to mention one quick thing about potential future items to be used with this build. In the Quartermaster's store, I guess, for the Black Legion, there's the Legion Aether Spark, which is a flat, I think, upgrade to what I'm using right now in terms of just raw damage it can output. And the Legion Mantle also has just a lot of Aether related things on it. That would be really helpful. Though I don't quite know if it'd be a replacement for Mantle of the Weeping Eye. It might be. And the Legion Vestments are probably going to be the chest piece I shoot for because of the Aether damage and offensive ability and all of that nice regen on there. Plus having Chaos Resistance isn't that bad with what looks like what's going to be coming up in Act 4. But also there is the Aether Storm powder. And wait, what was another one? Aether Storm powder would be for 20%. Aether, and then the I guess Creed's Cunning would also work, or Elemental. But there's also a mark here, the Legion mark of the Spellweaver, for the Aether and Elemental damage with all of its other things. Though I don't know if it would really be better than the Combat Medics mark. It would be stuff I'd have to play with, but unfortunately, I don't think you can actually raise your Black Legion. Oh, Aether Dust is another one. That's just a flat additional damage bonus, like what goes in the rings, but it would go in the weapons. But yeah, I don't actually know that you can raise your reputation with the Black Legion presently, because it only comes from bounties and quests, and they don't have a bounty table, and they the quests are all for Act 4. So yeah, definitely something for the future to consider, though. And that was an update to the Albrecht Aether Ray Arcanist in Build 25. It's not a huge update. It's not a groundbreaking update, but it's a small update nonetheless. I'm really waiting for Build 26 when they raise the level cap, and I'll really have, you know, more points to play around with. I mean, even if it's just 5 levels, that's like 15 points that I could just either fill out the things that need to be filled out, like that and that and that, or build up something new, like maybe even, you know, work Panetti's in. But I'm hoping for a 10 level increase for 30 points, and then we can really have some fun and possibly go into another class as a permanent change, or even build up a couple abilities really far. But that's that. That's the build. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys next time.